ENISA confirmed ransomware attack against Collins Aerospace's automated check-in systems, which caused some widespread disruptions across Europe starting Friday on September 20th. This affected major EU airports, including London Heathrow, Brussels, and Berlin. Airports had to fall back to manual processes, in some cases using handwritten boarding passes, and others, iPads and laptops. There were 60 flight cancellations at Brussels Airport alone on Monday, and only 42% of flights were departing within an hour of the scheduled time. Collins is owned by RTX, that's RTX Corporation, not the line of GPUs, and provides automated check-in systems for multiple European airports. Law enforcement involved in investigating the ransomware attack. The origin is not disclosed as of when I did our prep notes. There was a Bitkom survey of 1,000 German companies, and which found that ransomware was the most common cyber attack that they were facing. 1 in 7 having paid the ransom. That's an interesting stat, I think. And recent months have seen multiple cyber attacks, including a Jaguar Land Rover production pause. So seems to be a growing trend in Europe right now. I think, all things considered, 60 out of 550 flights, as the number that was shared for Brussels cancellations, still close to 90% operational. Adaptation to a critical system failure like this, I think, could have gone worse. Would we say falling back to iPad check-in or even handwritten paper boarding passes, is that a sign of inadequate failover planning, or is it comprehensively planning for the potential of not having any digital access?
I think honestly it is pretty good. I always like to be like the optimist. Like I always like to be like, yeah, you did a good job, because security is hard for everybody. Although I am just coming off of vacation where I did have to fly, so I am a little salty about flying. I feel like the 90% operational is usually like that's like a normal operating efficiency. Like the 60 lost flights that they had, like that sounds like about normal for day to day. I also read through this article, and I was a little confused at first. It seems like the information is kind of all over the place. I found one that said 217 flights have been canceled. I mean, I know the 60 figure was just for Brussels, but we've got a few different numbers coming out that could be across maybe all of the places. I don't know, but it seems like nobody's really got a solid idea of like the actual impact. And then also, like, not to say that like 60 out of 550 flights like made it, but there's also delays and stuff like that, and that could impact like your trip after, or like wherever your connecting flight is. So this is probably like a rippling effect. Just because those 60 were canceled doesn't mean it didn't have like a bigger effect. I also thought this was a bigger impact in terms of like what actually happened. So after reading the article, it looks like just the check-in procedure and like the bagging, like the check bag procedure and like check-in, all that was what was actually affected. And then like people actually getting on the flights and check and doing all that stuff, it seemed like that was not impacted. I could be wrong. So I think like they say they went back to iPads and like papers and laptops. It sounds like they probably just like went to their site and did the check-in like you'd normally do, like the 24 hours before you fly. So this is like there's all sorts of information going around on this. But yeah, overall, I think they did a good job. I think the most important thing is like communication, because like with airports and planes and these big systems where you have to service like a lot of people and you've got a lot of things going on, it can be difficult probably to get even to where they managed to get the iPads and the papers. Like I commend them for being able to like communicate and get, at least it seems like, mostly everybody on the same page and keep things moving. So yeah, probably could have been better, and hopefully they'll use this as a learning opportunity. But yeah, certainly, like you said, could have been worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds like this might have affected. From what I read, it's very similar to like checkout kiosks, right? Like point of sale systems. So the software was affected, but it like had a hardware component that they relied on. So like it is huge that they were able to go back to like paper. Um, I mean, that doesn't happen unless you have like failover plans, right? So I'm sure it would have been way worse. And especially in the EU where their airports are very like relying on each other. right? You fly
Yeah.
into Heathrow and then you like hop through Germany, and so the cascading nature of this was like pretty bad from what I've heard. Um, yeah, it's like a good reminder that everybody checks their third party vendors for what security controls do you have in place, but you definitely need to think about it in the availability as well, and like what if they're gone, right?
Mike, I know you wanted us to pull this story to take a look at, so I think it's a good example of this was a targeted attack on a single vendor being used within the airport, and it had this level of disruption. So certainly, it's not just Collins Aerospace that was feeling the pain of that attack, and it's definitely something where there can be not just the immediate impact of a ransomware attack, but the longer lasting impact that it has with trust with partners and with those that are using the service, right?
Yeah, I think there's like one other big thing that stands out to me that makes me a little nervous is that, especially with Jaguar Land Rover, who, from what I understand, like still hasn't recovered and will be. I think they're projecting like October 1st at this point. It seems like ransomware actors are going back to big game hunting, which is very disruptive. So I'm hoping that trend doesn't continue.